Okay, so I'm seeing that we've got Peter Iwanowitz on, and I think we're expecting Rory Christian as well, so I might just give it another minute to see if some other folks join before we get started here. Can folks hear me okay? Great.
Yes.
Oh, shoot, but I'm not hearing you guys in the right way. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can try to get my audio fixed here. Okay, I think that's better now. Try to reshare.
Do you need a test?
Yes, that works. Thank you, Ona.
Problem.
All right. Let's see. Still not seeing other council members, but I think we can go ahead and get started because we're a couple minutes in. So thank you for joining us today. The purpose of this feedback session is to gather initial feedback from members regarding topics that they feel need to be further discussed at public council meetings. And as a reminder, these feedback sessions are not deliberative, and the feedback gathered will be summarized at the subsequent public meeting on Monday. These sessions are also being recorded and will be posted to the Climate Act website. The topics that we're covering here today are gas system transition, buildings, industry, and health chapters. I think we'll probably we do have slides prepared as we have in other sessions, but it seems like members are happy enough just jumping right into providing feedback. So we're happy to do that. But if you would like us to review any of the staff recommendations on these chapters, we could do that as well. And so once we open it up for council member feedback on one topic, we'll work our way through all the members that are interested in providing feedback on that topic. And then once they've had that opportunity, we'll move on to the next topic using the same structure. And so the first item that we have, and I should also mention that if you joined us this morning, which Peter, it's good to see you again. You don't feel that you need to reiterate the feedback that you provided this morning. We did capture that, but anything that you would additionally like to mention, we're happy to take notes on as well. So with that, I think we're ready to go into the topic of gas system transition. So any feedback from council members on gas system transition?
Sarah, there's a note in the chat from Ona about a CAC member who's waiting in Teams.
Oh,
I didn't want to throw off this message, but I see at least one council member name in the Teams meeting. And I've left a message, but I'm not sure if that member has access to the messaging. So if there's someone else who can reach out, just wanted to throw that out there.
do you know who it was, Ona?
It looks like it's Ann Reynolds.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to try to send her a note. Peter, you've got feedback on this?
Yeah, it might be best if held off and hopefully Anne can join us on the WebEx. Because while it's not duplicative of what I raised at the earlier session, it is an issue where I would prefer to just sort of maybe wait until Anne joined, because it was an issue that sort of came up, and it's the whole issue of fossil versus natural gas and kind of back and forth. I just wanted to make one more point about that, but is it okay if we kind of hold off for a minute or
Sure.
two? Well, I know we're just the two of us as council members, and maybe Rory joining. It could be a more expeditious call than the morning one was, but
Yep.
Sarah, I did join Teams and try to tell everyone, this is Jane from DOL, to come over. It was unclear if Anne heard me, like I admitted her from the lobby into Teams, but I did try to get everyone over to from Teams onto WebEx.
Thank you. I did shoot her a note as well, but I just got a response that she's not in the office today.
Hey, if you're talking about me,
Oh.
I'm here.
Oh,
good.
great. Welcome, Anne.
Sorry about that.
Trying to get organized here. We did have these meetings originally set up as Teams, and we changed them to WebEx to make it easier for members to join. So sorry for any confusion. We were just going to jump into gas system transition feedback, and Peter had some feedback, but he was asking if we would wait for you, Anne, to show up so he could just say it once. So Peter, if you're ready, over to you for your feedback.
yeah. So Anne, just a little thank you, Sarah, and thanks everybody for joining. And again, overarching thanks for all the hard work that staff are doing, not only to put together presentations, but to work on the drafts and incorporating comments. Really deep appreciation. Just a lot of stuff is not easy, and just wanted to let that be known. Deep appreciation, so thank you. And just a little bit of context, and I'm not going to go into all my comments that were made this morning, but there does seem to be, inconsistence, not the right word, but just sort of some language that kind of differs from time to time, whether it's fossil or natural gas or just oil and gas. And while, I think some members of the council object to the term fossil, I think we should try to figure out the right language to be consistent, because I wouldn't want to see somebody say, well, you said fossil, so therefore something like biofuels could sort of play because it's not a fossil fuel. And they want to, create the misimpression that we're doing that by having either limiting language or not. So at some point, the council has to figure out the right direction to staff and somebody do a control find through this massive document to have the language be what we want it to be. So that was just an overarching point. I know it's similar to what we talked about this morning, but not exactly.
Thanks, Peter. Anne, any feedback from you on gas system transition?
Not that I really prepared, Sarah, honestly. I was sort of prepped to listen in, but it sounds like I missed the discussion this morning, and well, let me ask you this. Was there a lot more on the discussion this morning in addition to what Peter just was forced to repeat for me, which I appreciate?
There was a good amount of discussion on gas system transition. We should be getting the WebEx recording posted by tomorrow.
Okay. Well, I do have, I have the language and have begun reading it, but I didn't really come with a list.
No problem. Ruth Ann or anyone else here as either a council member or a designee have any feedback on gas system transition?
Not for me.
All right, so moving on to buildings then. Any comments on buildings? Peter?
I'd just like to just commend, Commissioner Visnakis and the team and the other, I know that the draft was heavily worked on by former NYSERDA VP Janet Joseph. Tremendous work here. I think it's very honest and very straightforward. And obviously I had some comments this morning about consistency on the use of renewable natural gas and hydrogen. I think the pieces here in this gas transition piece are really, I'm sorry, on the buildings piece are a little bit inconsistent where the alt fuels group sort of landed on this one, but we talked about that this morning. And I think that the gas transition language is probably where we need to go, is how to move away from statute that could stymie the progress or keep challenges in the way of progress as identified in this chapter for transitioning as quickly as we can to full electrification here. Sorry, Sarah, I went on mute, but I was done with my comment there.
All right, great. Any other feedback on buildings? All right, moving on to industry. Peter?
So thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I wasn't able to sort of stick through the morning session to be able to sort of lay out some questions I had about industry. And they're similar to other issues I've raised before. And I just want to kind of just go through them real quickly. There's 3 or 4 of them here. On page 6, the edits on the industry chapter, it wasn't entirely clear to me what we're trying to accomplish with this major change on page 6. Just trying to flip to it real quick. Apologies. The original sort of language in the draft talks about what the climate justice working group and kind of falling short of what statute requires. And I think what they were alluding to there is section 7.3. So I'm not exactly sure what this additional language is trying to accomplish here. So if somebody could maybe react to that when we have time, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, do we have Vince on the line?
Yes. Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you able to take that question, the changes on page 6?
Yeah, I think so. Peter,
those?
are you referring to the paragraph that begins in consideration of the Climate Justice Working Group feedback?
Yeah, it just wasn't clear what those 2 sentences, what we were trying to get at there. So maybe you could just walk it through.
Yeah, well, it was simply that the Climate Justice Working Group had made the comment that in the event that incentive-based approaches were not sufficient in reducing industrial emissions, that I believe they used the language regulatory approaches or something to that effect should be considered, within the parameters that that we not encourage or incentivize leakage by doing so. And so this was simply a way to try to incorporate their concern. We said that, or the language that's added is that other potential measures, which we used instead of regulations just to throw a wider net, since we wouldn't know at this point what we might be reacting to in the future in terms of why emissions were not getting to the point where they needed to be. But that those other potential measures must be carefully considered in the event that incentive-based strategies do not achieve sufficient reductions. So really, it was just an attempt to reflect back the Climate Justice Working Group's comments and incorporate it into the language.
Okay. I would maybe sort of suggest we sort of consider just basically being, that plain and saying if incentives don't work, we do have we retain the authority as provided to us under law to adopt a regulatory stance where we would set performance goals or other types of emissions limits and regulation. I don't know, to me, it just was kind of hard to understand what we're talking about. Maybe we just want to get straight to the point of what the Climate Justice Working Group recommended and what we will do. On page 11, in the middle of the page, there's an edit there that starts in consideration of Climate Justice Working Group feedback. I would suggest that the Power Authority just did a demonstration, with hydrogen. And rather than saying might be associated, it would be great to say have been shown to be associated with. I mean, the Power Authority's demonstration of hydrogen did show an increase in NOx emissions. So we've done some research already in this topic with, industrial scale sources of hydrogen. So rather than just might, again, just to reiterate, have been shown to be associated with. And then just real briefly, at the very top of page
Peter, can I
12.
ask you a question? This is Gilad Hammer, Minnesota.
Sure.
Sorry to butt in. I just wanted to make sure I understood. So this is specifically about NOx emissions from industrial combustion sources?
Yeah, so it is recommended that identifying, quantifying, mitigating these types of harmful effects that might be associated. I think we already have evidence that they have been shown to be associated with such new technologies and approaches, such as NOx emissions from hydrogen combustion. So it seems to be,
I think it did depend on emissions controls, so we might want to have some caveats about that.
Yeah, it might sort of seemed a little bit out of sync with what we know already. Because the health chapter, as we'll get into shortly, talks about the health impacts of NOx, both ambient and as well as indoor.
Well, I wasn't referring to the health impacts of NOx. I was referring to the emissions of NOx associated with hydrogen, depending on how it's used.
Yeah. Well, it talks about like mitigating these types of harmful effects. Okay on that, and then just going to the top of page 12 on the industrial side, I think under section 7.3 of the CLCPA, we're talking about prioritize emissions or prioritize emissions reductions for greenhouse gases and co-pollutants there. It's mitigating localized impacts is a little bit too tepid when you consider section 7.3 of the climate law. So I think we should strengthen that. I've raised the question about mitigation not being as strong as, relying on exactly what the statute mandates agencies to do.
Peter, you're referring to that phrase as well as mitigating localized impacts in disadvantaged communities?
Yeah,
at the
and
top
I
of
think
the
it's
page.
really, as well as, doing the two steps under 7.3, which is state agencies, and I say that writ large, right? I don't want to have to go through the laundry list, but, state entities should be ensuring, you know, a prioritization of co-pollutant emissions reductions as well as GHGs, as well as no disproportionate impacts. So that was it, Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Any other comments or questions on industry? All right, moving on to public health then. Any questions or comments on this one? Peter, oh, you put your hand down, but it's back up again. All right, Peter.
Yeah, sorry. It sounds like you may be only getting questions from me based on the other council members are there, but I'll step out of the way if there's like one of the agency heads or somebody representing on behalf of the agency heads wants to step in rather than me just talking all this meeting. But so I'll pause to see if an agency head wants to jump in or somebody representing on behalf of. Okay, hearing nobody weighing in, I will continue along. I would love if Henry Splitoff could just give me a run through on the top of page 5. It says in July of 2022, Department of Health established a new Office of Health Equity and Human Rights. I apologize, Henry. I didn't know that department have actually created one of these things, and I'm just curious about it. If you could walk us through what the objectives are for this new Office of Health Equity and Human Rights, and what will it do?
Yeah, hi, Peter. Well, I mean, I think that's a good question. The office was just established this past summer, and a head of the office was designated. And beyond that, I mean, I've had a meeting with them to discuss common interests, and they're definitely interested in the climate change issue and climate justice. But I think the office is really just getting started, and as far as I can tell, there's not a lot in the way of staff, many staff assigned to the office. So it's really just getting going, trying to establish its objectives. But ultimately, it is intended to address health equity issues, and broadly, not just environmental, obviously. So, you know, that's about all I can offer at this point. There's no description written up of it on the on our website yet. So that's all I know. But, you know, I think they want to be engaged. They want to be engaged on climate and with other partners, and they want to seek funding to address equity issues. I do know that.
Okay. Well, maybe something to take back to the folks at DOH is that if we roll this thing out, people may have that same question. From, you know, the broader public may have that same question. So we might want to see if something can be fleshed out or a little some description on the website. And I'll just add, similar to the comment I just made on industrial sources, that I think in this paragraph we should really be, you know, appreciating the mandates under section 7.3 that the Department of Health will be under, in terms of no disproportionate impacts in disadvantaged communities, and also prioritize reductions of greenhouse gases and co-pollutants in disadvantaged communities, rather than the language here that says do not inadvertently increase. And certainly that's a given under the law, but we also want to make sure that we prioritize those reductions and we don't have disproportionate impacts.
Sure, understood. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this was just to address the comments we got that there was a concern about creating hotspots. But yeah, we can nuance that language to, you know, to address that.
Yep, I'm really happy. This focus in, you know, new hotspots and just offering up some language changes to strengthen it and be more direct as people kind of read about these new offices and stuff. And just because I've recognized it elsewhere about citations, I just wanted to give you a prop for citation on page 6, number 38. It'd be great if we could be consistent. That's a nice, here's the chapter. You want to go find it? We've sometimes mentioned like thermal networks and other things, new pieces of law, but always good, you know, for those who follow along closely on the legal stuff to know what chapter they can go look up, chapter of the law. So thanks for that good reference, chapter 563 of the laws of 2022. Page 11, just my support for the language that you added there about good information on hydrogen and the benefits of fuel cells and non-combustion. I think that aligns with kind of where the Alt Fuels Working Group was, and I just wanted to say thank you for you and the team at the Health Department for sort of recognizing that work, but also bringing it into this space in this chapter. I think it was really important.
Good.
Then, sorry, one more thing, and just flipping the pages. It's not a lot here. On the page, top of page 21, the original draft had some intriguing, though to me personally not startling information out there that I hope people in the public have absorbed a little bit of the relative contribution of residential wood heating with, heating with wood in the residential sector, representing less than 2% of the homes. But the original language had tied it back to saying it was the particulate matter emissions were greater from that source than power generation and the entire transportation. It looks like there's been some updating there. It seems like a significant change, or was that just, you know, a misread of the earlier in the earlier draft? But you know, we all know that wood smoke is pretty harmful. It's a big contributor. But I was just wanted to just sort of maybe you could just explain it's no longer those combined, or.
Well, you know, there were a number of different members working on this chapter, and that the reference for that statement had gotten lost in the shuffle. And when we found it, it didn't say power generation and transportation sector combined. It only said transportation sector, so we made that edit. So I'm not sure where the original statement had come from about both sectors combined.
Okay, well, I think that's just a really wonderful example of the due diligence that you are putting into this chapter, but also all the agency staffs are putting into it all. And I just wanted to have a little bit of a conversation about it. It's still startling that you have such a small fraction of residential homes combusting wood smoke, but the PM from that is greater than the transportation sector when you think of the millions of vehicles and trucks on our road. So.
Right.
Thanks for the extra diligence on that. Still pretty startling data point.
Yes.
And Sarah, that was it for me on the health chapter. Again, it's always been one of my favorites, but that's my public health roots.
I actually have just a curiosity question, right where Peter was. That sentence that residents are increasingly turning to biomass for their heating needs. I guess my question is, that's true?
Yeah, I'm looking for that sentence, and where is it?
At the last sentence on page 20. Residents increasingly turn to biomass to heat their homes. And I was just sort of in the same vein as Peter. I was wondering I was wondering how much they're increasingly, like, is it really on the rise?
Well, so again, similar to the previous answer I gave, this was a team effort, and that statement, I'm not sure the exact origins of it. There's no citation. I think there have been times over the last few years where there was a big increase in biomass use or wood burning. I think during the economic downturns that we've had, it increased. At this moment, I think there is an increase in recreational wood burning outdoors, not necessarily for heat. But as far as the current trend on using wood for heat in the last few years, I'm not sure what the answer to that is. And maybe someone else on the call does have something to say.
I don't have it up in front of me, but is that the way that sentence is written? Does biomass refer just to just to wood?
I think so.
No, I don't think it does, because it
Because-
talks about biomass and biofuels, and I think where you're going
Right.
with this flat is where I was about to go.
Yeah, the state's adopted and portions of the state have adopted a bioheat standard that require a certain degree of biodiesel blending into the heating oil supply, which would, as it's gradually implemented, I believe we have to hit B20 by 2030. Someone can correct me on that trajectory. Would presumably represent an increase of bioenergy used in these homes. So depending on how it's written, I'm sorry, I don't have it right up in front of me. I've been listening, but without the document, it's maybe it was a mistake, but they could refer to that.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
looks like that could be it. But I wonder, given like how, I don't know if you'd say alarming, but how alarming the next sentence is about PM 2.5, it might be good to clarify that. So it's not like heating homes with wood accounts for more PM than the transportation sector, and it's on the rise, is kind of different. Maybe it is, even without the biodiesel, I don't know.
This is Hillel again.
I
I
think-
think it is, it's not that surprising to folks who have been working in that area. I mean, we do have a lot of studies out there about wood, and there is considerable fine particulate matter associated with wood combustion. So that it's not something that's gone unnoticed, at least on our part. In quantity, it is large. It varies in location, but it's not only in rural areas. And there are various debates going on about how and how controls might come in, EPA and their measuring methods, et cetera. But it's definitely a known topic, and it's not a small one.
But yeah, I think getting to the bottom of the trend in the aggregation of biomass and biofuels in the trend, I think that's important to get a reference for that or change it if necessary.
It's also worth noting specifically regarding wood, but sometimes also for other fuels, they will respond to fuel prices. And so when fuels get expensive, we do see a rise in wood consumption, and
Right.
sometimes vice versa.
Hmm.
The
Thanks for
statistics are
that.
sometimes a little hard to come by, but there are surveys, and we have seen some of that kind of information.
Thanks, Hillel. And agree with the last thing you said, Henry. If it's possible to find out, or at least cite that increase, I think that would be good.
Sure.
Okay, if I just weigh in a little real quickly here.
Sure.
Thanks, Ann, for surfacing that. I sort of wonder, given Vlad's comment earlier about the statutory requirements for more biodiesel in the oil heat sort of sector, whether we can look at this language and maybe it is supposed to be biomass and biofuels in that second time in the sentence.
Oh, you mean in the one that says that it's greater than the transportation sector? That
No,
is just wood.
no.
Okay,
I was thinking the language that Ann was looking at, and we was talking about the
Yeah.
greatest use is residents increasingly turn to biomass. Do we also need to have a reference there to saying, and a statute requires a greater, percentage of biofuel in home heating?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we can look into it.
Thank you. Thanks for raising that, Ann.
Anything else on the health chapter? Anything on any of the chapters that we had here today? Peter, your hand is up, but I think that's a legacy hand. Yep. Okay. All right. Well, not seeing any additional hands. I think we can go ahead and end this feedback session a bit early. Thank you for participating.
Thank you for all the feedback.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good to be with you all.
Okay, bye.